administrating one of the worst regimes on the planet without firing a shot. That's the big mistake, according to... Now, I will say, Dave Smith, I will say he was consistent a while ago, then he was inconsistent, then he was consistent again. So if you go back a couple of years, he was calling for Donald Trump to be impeached. Then he voted for Donald Trump, apparently.
Pause it. Whoa, wait a minute. So now, not only do you know my name, you're familiar with my history. You're familiar with where I was years ago and where I am today. And then in all those videos, you just referred to me as the comedian, Tucker Carlson's guest, Joe Rogan's guest. But you know where I stood on the issues years ago? Jesus, man. It was that hard to remember Dave Smith? Well, listen, hey, I don't want to beat you up over old stuff we got here. And you know the name now. Now, of course, he's saying that I was arguing that Donald Trump should be impeached for defanging this evil regime without firing a single shot. No, what I said is that Donald Trump should be impeached and removed for getting the United States of America into yet another war in the Middle East, which was his entire mandate not to do. And I know for Ben Shapiro logic, he'll say, oh, America's not at war. That's right. We're you know what the thing is? Remember how Iran was guilty of attacking Israel on October 7th? Ben Shapiro, remember that? Because Hamas is their proxy. Well, our proxy, Israel, just bombed the crap out of Iran with our bombs while we gave them diplomatic cover and then take out the missiles headed back in their directions. So yeah, I'd consider that taking us into a war in the Middle East. And don't tell me anything about how Iran is the most brutal, evil regime, please. As the government of Israel has slaughtered far more innocent people, destroyed the lives of far more innocent people than Iran could ever dream to. Not that they wouldn't. They're not the best guys. They just don't have the opportunity, and Israel does. But you know what? Ben Shapiro makes a point. He criticizes me for my lack of consistency. Imagine a world where Ben Shapiro can look at me and say, I was inconsistent. By the way, here, Natalie, do we have that tweet? Let's pull this. This hasn't been deleted. Imagine making this argument when you still have this tweet out and have not deleted it. Oh, here. Okay, let's see what he said. Shapiro, I will never. No, hold on. Pull up his words at the top. I will never vote for Donald Trump. Here's why. Ben Shapiro. I stand against the establishment that sowed the seeds of Trumpism. I stand against the Republican Party that insists that victory matters more than principle, because victory without principle isn't just meaningless. It's counterproductive to my belief system. Hashtag never Trump. Like, who do you think you're fooling, Ben Shapiro? You were a never Trumper who came around and supported Donald Trump. You're going to talk to me about my inconsistency because I criticized. I've been the same on the issues the entire time. The only thing you could claim inconsistent is that, like, I voted for a guy and then said, ah, man, I probably shouldn't have done that. Okay, fine. I didn't change my principles. Now, did I? Right? I thought for you, not supporting Donald Trump was all about principles. Okay? And then, I guess you never really had those principles. You talk to me about a lack of consistency. You are the biggest hypocrite in the United States of America. You rose to prominence opposing identity politics as a proud Zionist. Your entire existence is a contradiction. The nerve of Ben Shapiro. Challenge me on my consistency. Does he not know? Okay, he's learned my name. Now, the next step is to learn my nickname. My nickname is the most consistent motherfucker you know, Ben Shapiro. All right, let's go back to the video. Let's go back to hear what Benny Boy's got to say.
And then he's calling for Donald Trump to be impeached again. So here he is back to being Captain Impeach. But don't worry, he too is... Apparently, America first means Iran must have a nuclear weapon and America can do nothing. And if you disagree with that, then you are not America first. You know, and then you're just some guy like President Trump who's in an...
I mean, come on. This is why Ben Shapiro is falling apart and losing all of his influence and just constantly being mocked. He even has his top guys at Daily Wire are basically going against him as much as they're allowed to. Being America first means that Iran must be allowed to have a nuclear weapon. Again, it's like arguing being anti-war means you're going to let Saddam Hussein have a nuclear weapon. Iran does not have a nuclear weapon. All of our intelligence backs this up. Literally, since 2007, the CIA has been saying they don't have a nuke and they're not pursuing a nuke. This year, the Director of National Intelligence released the annual threat report 2 months ago. What did she find? Iran does not have a nuclear weapon and they are not pursuing a nuclear weapon. The entire international community has conceded the same thing. They don't have nuke. This is a figment of your imagination, or otherwise known as a pretense for a regime change war, which the Israelis and the neoconservatives have openly admitted for 30 years has been their goal, overthrowing the Iranian regime. Tell me something, Ben Shapiro. When Netanyahu said in 1992 that Iran was 1 to 3 years away from a nuke, and then when he said they were 1 to 3 years away from a nuke again and again and again and again for 30 years, 35 years, whatever the math on that is, 33, 34 years. When he was saying that, was he mistaken? Was he wrong? Or was he trying to lie my country into another war just like he did with Iraq and Libya and Syria? Which one do you think? See, I tend to think it's the latter. No, America first doesn't mean Iran, this non-existent Iran gets nuclear weapons that you just make up like every goddamn war is sold on these bullshit lies. America first means we don't go to war on behalf of other countries. But you wouldn't know about that because you're not America first, as we all know you're Israel first, which is fine. Just be that. At least admit it. See, being America first to me means that I don't celebrate when Bashar al-Assad is ousted in Syria and the emir of al-Qaeda is put into power. I don't celebrate because, ooh, we broke up the Shiite crescent and now Iran can't move weapons into Hezbollah. Because that's Israel's problem. I'm an American, so my beef is with al-Qaeda because they hit us on 9/11 and killed thousands of my fellow countrymen. To me, I would say, yeah, that's what America first means. Yeah, I would say that. And I'm quite happy to take that position. No, I'm sorry. Like, it's just unbelievable. There's all these people out there. Iran is the #1 sponsor of terrorism. What terrorism exactly? Because terrorism's a big problem. You know, like here in the West, we've had major problems with al-Qaeda and ISIS. Does Iran support al-Qaeda and ISIS? Oh, no, that's right. They fight wars against them. But see, Ben Shapiro celebrates when Bashar al-Assad falls because now Hezbollah won't get weapons anymore. Hey, someone do a quick Google search for me. When was the last time Hezbollah attacked the United States of America? That's right. Yeah, you see, Hezbollah is a real threat. They are a real threat, or at least they were until they were taken out. Now, what is that threat? Oh yeah, they're a threat to Israel's ability to occupy southern Lebanon because they kicked their pussy asses out of there. Unbelievable. What does America first mean? You're right, Ben Shapiro. America first means fighting wars on behalf of Israel. Okay, you take that line and we'll see who wins this argument with the people. Let's keep playing.
Agree with that, then you are not America first. You know, then you're just some guy like President Trump, who's an anonymous rando.
I mean, what a impotent leader to be sitting there talking about coming back to the negotiating table. It's like sitting after Pearl Harbor and telling FDR, now's the time to go negotiate with the Japanese. Right. Negotiations are over now. The time for negotiations was before this. And so, yeah, Donald Trump looks, and man, I supported him this last year. I apologize for doing so. It was a bad calculation. At the time, it seemed like the right one. But he should be impeached and removed for this one.
Okay, and then just to follow that up, Dave Smith went on Twitter, and then he called the president of the United States, quote, the most impotent of a leader imaginable. He's allowing one side of a war who clearly wants to drag us into lie about our involvement while not correcting the record. Trump has betrayed MAGA and every principle of America first. He is no longer worthy of any of our support. He probably never was, says Dave Smith. So, just going to point out once again, these are the people who believe they should be in control of MAGA. Do you agree with that? 77 million Americans voted for Donald Trump. Some of us campaigned for Donald Trump. Some of us gave money to Donald Trump. I'm one of those people. And you know what I voted for? This. And you know who represents that view?
Yeah, of course you did, Ben Shapiro. No one's disagreeing with that, Ben Shapiro. Obviously, you voted for him. Listen, how pathetic is this? How pathetic is this? Is that Ben Shapiro thinks that this is, and look, I get what he's doing here. I think you all probably do too, right? Is that he knows it's Donald Trump and he knows I'm criticizing Donald Trump. So now he can come out and just be like, I'm on Trump's side against these guys like Dave. See, audience, aren't you with me? That's the first time he mentions my name is when he thinks he can use Trump against me. Again, the problem is that, Ben Shapiro, you were a never Trumper on principle, right? I never said I was pro-Trump on any, I just said, I don't know, all things considered, I think we're better off with him than we are with Kamala Harris. So let's push for that. That's it. My principles have not wavered on this thing. Look, the idea that, yes, obviously, Ben Shapiro, you voted for this. Yes, you did. You know, by the way, there was some recent polling that just came out today. Did you know there's not one demographic of Americans that support war with Iran? Not one. Not blacks, not whites, not Latinos, not senior citizens, not Gen Z, Gen X, millennial. Not one demographic supports war with Iran, which we are already in and dangerously close to major escalations right now. So you could sit here and say, oh, these guys think they should be in charge of MAGA. Is that really what you want? I don't know, Ben Shapiro. Fighting wars on behalf of Israel is an America first. So yeah, that's what I want. I want a president who, well, all of his supporters were bragging about how there were no new wars under his watch the first time. That's what I'd like. I'd like to not get involved in more wars, especially ones based off bullshit lies by people like you who have pushed all the lies for all of these disastrous wars. And Ben Shapiro, I mean, come on, the guy doesn't, you know, the thing about it is that he doesn't believe in anything other than the cause of Israel. It's the only thing he actually believes in. And then Ben Shapiro, you know, he was tweeting that, what was it, his old tweet about how Arabs like to play in mud and blow stuff up. And then he went on to apologize for that. Kind of inconsistent, if you ask me. But what did he really mean? Did he mean the apology? I don't think he did. I think he meant it the first time when he said it. You know? There's a guy who won't even tell you what he really thinks because he's trying to trick you into supporting a policy that he knows if he actually told you what he wanted, you would never support him. That's who Ben Shapiro is. Now, let me tell you something. I remember Ben Shapiro from the first time Ben Shapiro ever came on my radar was in 2012 when Ron Paul was running for president, and he attacked him in the most vicious way, The guy who was against all of the terror wars from the very beginning, the guy who was against the Patriot Act from the very beginning, the guy who got everything right while Ben Shapiro got everything wrong. He called him an anti-Semite and a racist and a loon and all these things. Never went back and apologized, never corrected the record. That's who this guy is. There, let's keep playing.
And you know what I voted for? This. And you know who represents that view? The President of the United States, who, on the afternoon of June 17th, put out on Truth Social the following statement, all capital letters, unconditional surrender, exclamation point. So is that not America first? Or it wasn't America first when America asked for the unconditional surrender of Japan. It wasn't America first when America sought to end.
I mean, how pathetic is that? Oh, okay. So you're bragging on one hand that he's decapitated Iran without firing a single shot, and then also boasting that he's demanding unconditional surrender. Okay, if you want to argue that demanding unconditional surrender from Japan was America first somehow, that anybody who's familiar with the history of the term America first, think about the inversion of language here. That was America first, demanding an unconditional surrender from Japan, by the way, against the wishes of 5-star General Dwight D. Eisenhower, who didn't want us to drop the nukes, thought it would be horrifically inhumane and completely unnecessary, and that Japan was willing to negotiate a surrender anyway. That's just a 5-star general, though. I mean, what does he know? Next up, Ben Shapiro. But so that's it. So we're demanding an unconditional surrender. Well, one thing I'd say that demanding an unconditional surrender from Japan and now demanding an unconditional surrender from Iran, well, does seem to imply that America's at war now, doesn't it? Usually, parties who aren't at war don't demand unconditional surrenders from the other. By the way, like there's so much here that's just so ridiculous, the war propaganda, because you have to understand, right? Like in the worldview of the war hawks, this is just like World War II. Every single war is just like World War II, but it's nothing like the wars in the last 25 years. You understand that, right? Going to war with Iran has very little in common with Iraq and Afghanistan and Libya and Syria and Somalia and Yemen or Niger or Pakistan. There's very little in common with that, but it's just like World War II. You see that? There's a slight difference, a couple, I would say. I mean, this isn't the type of thing that will ever stop Ben Shapiro from supporting a war, but Japan attacked us. That was a big part of the calculation before we demanded that unconditional surrender, now wasn't it? Like, forget even getting into the stuff about how FDR knew that Pearl Harbor was coming and probably kind of lured them into it. Forget all of that for a second. They attacked us. They attacked us and killed Americans, okay? Like, Iran has not attacked the United States of America. Neither has Hezbollah or Hamas or the Houthis. If they've done anything, it's been when America's intervened in their part of the world on behalf of Israel. But yes, of course, but even if you were going to argue, so because in Ben Shapiro's mind, World War II was America first. By the way, just to be clear so everybody knows, back in that tweet that we pulled up from 2016, when Ben Shapiro was a never Trumper and said that Donald Trump represented the biggest threat to the United States of America and was supporting Ted Cruz for that all the way through the primaries. And back then, when America First started being used as a slogan, Ben Shapiro opposed it because he said it was anti-Semitic. But tell me about my inconsistency. Ben Shapiro said that America First was an anti-Semitic term because it's the term that was used by people who didn't want to fight World War II. And as we all know, that means you're pro-Holocaust and hate the Jews. If you were at the time opposed to what became the biggest bloodbath in human history, the worst thing that's ever happened in the history of the world, if you were against that, well, that just means you hate Jews. But now he's trying to weaponize the term America First to point out that that actually going to war with Iran is America First? Is that what it means? America First means another catastrophic war in the Middle East against a country who poses absolutely no threat to us. Okay. Good luck with that one, Ben Shapiro. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Prolon. Forget everything you think you know about fasting. Prolon by El Nutra is the only patented fasting mimicking diet that combines the benefits of prolonged fasting with a science-backed nutrition plan so you can hit your health and weight loss goals without actually having to give up food. I don't know about you guys. I've heard a ton about these fasting diets. Everybody swears by them, and there's a lot of science that backs up that they're really good for you. But for me, fasting is a deal breaker. I just can't do it. I'm not going to be able to not eat. But now, thanks to Prolon, a revolutionary plant-based nutrition program that nourishes the body while making cells believe they're fasting, you can get the benefits of fasting without actually having to give up food altogether. And this all starts with Prolon's 5-day program, snacks, soups, and beverages, all designed to keep your body in a fasting state while being able to enjoy snacks, soups, and beverages. It's unlike anything you've ever experienced. Go check them out for yourself. Right now, Prolon is offering part of the problem listeners 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. All you got to do is go to prolonlife.com/POTP. That's PROLONLIFE.com/POTP for this special offer. prolonlife.com/POTP for 15% off their 5-day nutrition program. All right, let's get back into the show. Let's keep playing.
And the Gulf War by pushing Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. It wasn't America First when President Trump hit Qasem Soleimani because he's self-appointed.
Pause.
MAGA.
I'm sorry. Pause it and rewind it just a little bit there, Natalie. I apologize, but we're going to have to get back to the other point. Did he just use the Gulf War as an example of an America First policy? I'm actually blown away by this. This is further, by the way, this is further than I made it in the video. I haven't seen these arguments yet. We're all doing this together in real time. I saw that he mentioned my name and I went, well, I know what I'm doing on the show today. And then listened for like 30 more seconds. And I was like, oh, this is dumber than I thought. But I did not know this was coming. The Gulf War was America first. So let me get this straight. Saddam Hussein invades Kuwait over a slant drilling dispute over debt left over from his war against Iran, in which he used chemical weapons against the Iranian people, and the U.S. backed him in that war. Actually, backed both sides of that war, if you want to really get the details right. But you know about that now, don't you, Ben Shapiro? So he invades, with a wink and a nod, by the way, from the United States of America, invades Kuwait. We go in to fight on behalf of Kuwait to liberate the democracy of Kuwait. Was their emir represented the will of the people or something like that? But you're gonna, what, that was America first? Like, listen, I know I actually mentioned this recently on the show, but it's almost like, did Ben Shapiro just revert back to a 1992 talking point? Because, you know, the talking point after the Gulf War was that, oh, this was so successful and so great, and we took no casualties, and our boys didn't even get injured. It didn't cost us that much money, and the world is better. You know, the global order is better with Saddam not in Kuwait. That was the talking point in 1992. The problem is that we were bogged down in Iraq for the next 30 years. So you don't get to brag about that anymore. That was what popped off the whole beef with Saddam Hussein that led to Bill Clinton's bombing campaigns and sanctions campaigns. And then, of course, ultimately, George W. Bush ended up invading and overthrowing Saddam. And then we spent the next 20 years doing this regime change insanity. Something in the neighborhood of 1 million people died. Something, I think, like 15 million people were displaced. And it cost America about $2 trillion. So yeah, I would say that wasn't America first. I am stunned that Ben Shapiro, like the World War II example, I understand. That's what these hacks always go to. But the Gulf War, okay. All right, let's keep playing.
The Gulf War by pushing Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait. It wasn't America first when President Trump hit Qasem Soleimani, because these self-appointed MAGA priests get to decide, not the president of the United States. Well, Donald Trump had one more comment about Tucker Carlson, who's asked specifically about Tucker's take. He said, you know what, maybe you should get a TV network and then talk, and then maybe people.
Yeah, let me pause it 1 second, but try to pull back because I want to respond to this Tucker part as well. Listen, this is so bizarre, but like, he's saying that people like me, yes, killing Soleimani was a terrible decision, and it really risked a further conflict with Iran. It was a terrible decision to take him out, and it didn't do anything to degrade Iran's capability. By the way, it's the only thing, it's funny, by the way, isn't it? I should just mention this. Isn't it funny that Ben Shapiro, when he's trying to battle me, right? Like he's trying to battle an anti-war guy who is criticizing the president for leading us into a war. Now, just to be clear, when Donald Trump was running for president the first time and was saying to Jeb Bush, your brother lied us into a war in Iraq, that was a big fat mistake, we shouldn't do that anymore. When you know, that's when Ben Shapiro's never Trump. That's when Ben Shapiro's like, screw this guy. I have my principles and I'll never cave on my principles. But now, because I'm consistent and actually have principles and I'm criticized, now he's taking me on. It's like, this guy's claiming to speak for MAGA. First of all, I never claimed to speak for MAGA. Dude, I don't even claim to speak for the libertarians. Have you met the libertarians? No one speaks for them. I don't speak for anyone. I speak for myself. I speak for people who choose to agree with me, I suppose, but I'm not claiming to speak for MAGA. I know it's foreign to you, Ben, because you write about having principles, but this is what having principles actually means. I oppose this, and so I'm speaking out against it, and I'm trying to persuade others that I'm correct. and that they should oppose it as well. That's not me hijacking MAGA. But isn't it interesting, in this moment when Ben Shapiro finally works up the courage to utter my name and he wants to take me on, again, the examples we get are World War II and the Persian Gulf War. Those are the examples that he'll give. Now, the Gulf War. Now, why is it we've had some much more recent wars that Ben Shapiro supported? Why didn't he bring up any of those? Well, that's a mystery. I mean, I might scratch right through my hair into my brain trying to figure out why it would be that Ben Shapiro wouldn't use examples of more recent wars that he was a cheerleader for. Oh yeah, that's right. Because they were all unmitigated disasters where millions of people died and trillions of dollars were wasted. You know what's not America first, Ben Shapiro? Is spending $8 trillion on regime change wars. It's not America first when we're sitting here with our bravest young men from the last generation with their limbs blown off, swallowing pistols by the tens of thousands. Yeah, I wouldn't consider that America first. But tell me again how it's just like World War II. All right, let's get into the Tucker Carlson stuff.
Not the president of the United States? Well, Donald Trump had one more comment about Tucker Carlson, who's asked specifically about Tucker's take. He said, you know what? Maybe you should get a TV network and then talk, and then maybe people will listen.
I don't know what Tucker Carlson is saying. Let him go get a television network and say it so that people listen. Thank you.
All right, we'll go back to that in a second. But it's so funny. It's so transparent. Ben Shapiro is so transparently dishonest. And to admit, look, what's going on here? This is, by the way, of all the terror wars, this is the most blatant, because you had to be paying attention to know that that we fought the war in Iraq on behalf of Israel. You had to be paying attention to know that, like, overthrowing Muammar Gaddafi or overthrowing Bashar al-Assad, you had to be paying attention and reading stuff to know that was all because Israel had been pushing America into those wars. But you don't even if you're paying attention at all, you know this is a war for Israel. Okay? Like, Israel's even the one saying they sold weapons to the people who did October 7th, and they were selling weapons to Hezbollah and the Houthi. Like, Israel's the one launching the strikes to begin with. We'll see. That may not be true by the end of this podcast, but we'll see. But so what's going on here? Tucker Carlson is opposing America fighting a war on Israel's behalf. And that's why Ben Shapiro must attack him. Right? Isn't that just so transparently obvious? Now, Ben Shapiro and Tucker Carlson were cool. They did shows together. They did lots of stuff. It wasn't until until Tucker Carlson became critical of America funding and arming Israel's destruction of Gaza and now fighting more wars on behalf of Israel. That was the bridge too far. And so now Ben Shapiro is going to use whatever he can to get Tucker Carlson. Now, he knows he doesn't have the popular support. He knows his position doesn't have the popular support. But there's one guy who does have a lot of popular support, and that's Donald Trump. So now this never Trumper will try to weaponize Donald Trump against me and against Tucker Carlson in the most pathetic way. Listen, I know a lot of people who listen to this show supported Donald Trump. You know, I threw my support behind him in the last election too. But like, all of you know that clip from Donald Trump is the most retarded thing he's ever said in his life. It is actually, I swear to God, there was something about it that I've never looked at Donald Trump as being so old. It was only like, as soon as he said it, I was like, oh yeah, he's 80. That's what's going on here. He said, Tucker Carlson should get a TV network so that some people actually listen to him. Excuse me, Tucker Carlson is the biggest, most influential right-wing political commentator in the country. You did his show. Think about like what a piece of shit Donald Trump is. Tucker Carlson, man, He gave the keynote speech at the Republican National Convention. He's stuck his neck out for the president. He's gone to bat for the president. He was touring, campaigning with him all around the country, got up at Madison Square Garden and spoke on behalf of the president, spoke at a bunch of different events. He was the intellectual backing for Donald Trump because he could say it in a way that Donald Trump couldn't say it himself. He was the #1 rated show in cable news, got fired and got bigger by orders of magnitude. There's Donald Trump. If you let me ask something. Hey, Donald Trump, if you need a TV network for people to hear you, then why did you do so many podcasts to get yourself back in the White House? Did people not hear you on Joe Rogan or Tucker Carlson or with Theo Vaughn or with Andrew Schultz? You're hanging out with the Nelk boys. What are you talking about, dude? Did you really? And here's the thing, Trump knows this. He was smart enough to listen to Barron. At least that's what some reporting is saying, is that Barron was the one who convinced him that you got to do the podcast. This is where the eyeballs are now, which would make sense that his son would be a little more, have his finger on the pulse or whatever. But Trump obviously internalized that lesson because he did all the shows. They got huge, huge numbers, and they brought him back into the White House. He just wants to knock Tucker. It's that simple. He just wants to insult him because that's how it is with Donald Trump. Loyalty is an entirely one-way street. It doesn't matter what you did for the guy. You could have given him $300 million. You could have reinstated him on Twitter. You could have fought for him every single day. You could have given his keynote speech at the Republican National Convention. You could have done any of this. But if he perceives that you disagreed with him on something. By the way, Tucker didn't insult him. Tucker went out of his way to compliment Donald Trump. Just said he disagrees with him getting us into this war. Nope, you're done. And not just you're done, but you're a loser. Nobody listens to you. Tucker Carlson is breaking the internet right now for his grilling of Ted Cruz, but nobody listens to him. But you know what's even lower? What's even lower than what Donald Trump does is what Ben Shapiro's doing right here. Because Ben Shapiro is doing it from a podcast. He doesn't even have a TV show. He's insulting his own brand just because his big brother, he thinks now, who, by the way, he was never loyal to begin with, but just because he thinks he can use him because it's the only way he knows he can win over the audience. That people do seem to like that guy. They sure don't like you. But so now he's going to use Trump saying you have to have a TV network so anyone can listen to you. I mean, come on. It's just too pathetic. Man, of all the segments he's done about me, the first time he says my name, and it's the most pathetic segment yet. Unbelievable. All right, guys, let's take a moment and thank our sponsor for today's show, which is Sheath Underwear. Guys, I've been telling you about this company for so long. Great company run by great people, and they make an unbelievable product. The most comfortable pair of boxer briefs you will ever wear. Sheath uses moisture-wicking technology to create underwear that keeps everything breathable and incredibly comfortable for you downstairs. Now that the warm, hot summer months are upon us, it's really nice to have a nice breathable pair of Sheath underwear. I'm telling you, if you're active and you're outside and you're sweating, put on a pair of Sheath underwear. You're going to be a much happier person than you were in whatever other boxer briefs you were wearing. Also, they are a longtime sponsor of this show, so make sure to go support these guys. Sheathunderwear.com is the website, and use the promo code PROBLEM for 20% off your order. They ship anywhere in the world. Once again, sheathunderwear.com, promo code PROBLEM for 20% off your order. All right, let's get back into the show. All right, let's keep playing.
It's worthwhile noting who does agree with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene and Dave Smith and Candace Owens and all of the other very loud voices who are claiming that President Trump has betrayed the movement and so on and so forth. Those people would include Representative Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez, Representative Thomas Massie of Kentucky, who President Trump has wanted to primary. It includes Bernie Sanders, who has also come out against the President of the United States. The horseshoe theory is real and working. Thomas Massie says, quote, "This is not our war. I'm introducing a bipartisan war powers resolution tomorrow to prohibit our involvement." So first of all, that is not how the war powers resolution works. I mean, you can provide the resolution, but then the president has 60 days within which to continue to conduct activities before he has to go back to Congress for the possibility of a permission or shutdown of funds. So good luck with that, because this thing is going to be over well before that. Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez signed on as well. Bernie Sanders, very upset.
Here we have Ben Shapiro now, after all of that, invoking what can only be described as the lowest IQ argument in politics. There simply is no lower IQ argument than this one. Now, by the way, it's a somewhat effective one. And this is it because we are, we are social animals, and social psychology plays a big role. And so this is how you get like the lowest IQ boomers on your side. Is you go, you like that policy? The leftists agree with that policy. You like the left. That's it. That's all the argument is. No, you feel this way? So does AOC. You have cooties now. Okay. So I agree with people on the left on this issue. Who are you with, Ben Shapiro? You're with the CIA and Benjamin Netanyahu and Lindsey Graham and Dick Cheney and George W. Bush. I'm sure they all support this war as well. That's who you're with. What does that disprove anything? Like, what does it even mean? Like, if I could make the argument that oxygen is necessary to sustain human life, and someone could say, Hitler agrees with that argument. Like, what? Okay, who cares? It's either correct or it's incorrect. Which one is it? And this is, and then for Ben Shapiro, because he's not just pretending to be a Trump supporter. He's also pretending to be an American patriot. He's also pretending to be a conservative. But, at one point, he used to pretend to be a constitutionalist. And he's now arguing against Congress taking back the power to declare war. That's what you've found yourself arguing now. Now, forget this last little line here about how, the war will be over in 60 days. Okay, maybe not. Is anybody worried about that possibility? Yeah, you say the war will be over in 60 days. Yeah, you also said we'd be greeted as liberators and the war would be paid for in oil. It would be a cakewalk and the weapons of mass destruction were a slam dunk, right? Yeah, it's easy to sit here and say when you launch a war, this is going to be a piece of cake. But who knows if that's right or not? Certainly no reason to suspect it is. I hope it is. Like, we're at war already at this point, right? I'd much rather look bad and the situation be less of a catastrophe. I hope the war is over soon. I hope it is I hope it's as little of a disaster as possible, because I'm not rooting for that. But to just sit here, it's like what all the hawks are doing. I was just going off about this on the Piers Morgan show. It's like all these guys, like with such confidence, a few days into a war. Oh, yeah, this is so easy. It's going so good. It'll be over by the time the war powers acts. Like, okay. I'm just saying, I know the only comparisons we're allowed to use are World War II. World War II, last I checked, did not wrap up in 60 days. But it's a weird thing of me. I do like to reference all of the other wars of the last 25 years. None of them were over that quickly. None of them, not even close. Many of them went on for multiple decades. And Iran, at least on paper, is a much tougher adversary than any of them by any metric. Iran is, if you could picture, like on a map, you have like Iraq, and then there's Iran, and then there's Afghanistan. Iran is 3 times bigger than Iraq. They also have much more difficult terrain to fight on. They also have a military and an air force and intercontinental ballistic missiles. They actually have a fighting shot, or ballistic missiles. Maybe not intercontinental, but they have ballistic missiles. And so also they've already touched Israel. This has already gotten Israeli civilians killed, which all of a sudden just doesn't seem to be that big of a priority. Like we were, I thought that was the thing that really mattered. But no, that doesn't even really matter either, I guess. All right, let's keep playing.
Set. The boys over at Pod Save America are siding with Tucker Carlson and Marjorie Taylor Greene. I have a general rule. If the people at Pod Save America are agreeing with you on a major foreign policy issue, the designers of the JCPOA, you are doing it wrong. Here's Tommy Vietor, a former van driver.
Right, let's pause it right there. Let's pause it right there. Again, that's Ben Shapiro's rule of thumb. It's the dumbest rule imaginable. It's unbelievable. This guy's supposed to be like a professional smart person. This is the dumbest, lowest IQ argument imaginable. If the guys from that podcast are with you, then it must be a bad idea. Ben, like, do you defend the war in Iraq? Do you defend that war? You know who was against that war? People like Ron Paul, people like Pat Buchanan, and a whole bunch of leftists. A whole bunch of leftists. You know who was for it? You supported it. You supported that catastrophe. And like, imagine, look, like, I know it's tough for me to relate to this position because, you know, I've been right about all the major issues of our time. It's just kind of true. I've just been on the right side of them. So, I mean, I don't think there's one major issue. I'm saying like a major U.S. policy that since I've been doing this podcast, anyone, including Ben Shapiro, could sit here and argue that I didn't get right. Like when Ben Shapiro was saying, take the vaccine, you dopes. When Ben Shapiro was supporting lockdowns, what was I doing? Oh, yeah, that's right. I was telling the truth and getting it right. But imagine, I'm trying to imagine you had cheerled the war in Iraq, or you had cheerled any of these other wars, and then you're gonna turn around and advocate for the next war without even like the slightest bit of like, look, I'm hoping this isn't a disaster again, and look, I'm hoping the war will be over in 60 days, but I guess we really don't know what's going to happen and what the reaction is going to be here. No, it'll work. It'll be over in 60 days. You're an idiot. You agree with the left. Yeah, the left were much better on at least during George W. Bush, the left was much better on the wars in Afghanistan and the war in Iraq than neocon hawks like Ben Shapiro were. Okay, I'll take them. Like, what does this even mean? Again, like just to drive this point home, like, Ben Shapiro, do you hate Adolf Hitler? You know who's on your side? Joseph Stalin. Wow. See, my rule of thumb is I don't agree with Joseph Stalin. Tell me, is that an intelligent argument or is that the dumbest shit you've ever heard in your life? You tell me. All right, let's keep playing.
Are doing it wrong. Here's Tommy Vietor, a former van driver for Barack Obama.
The folks they're fighting against are like Tucker Carlson, Steve Bannon, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who I think on the merits, I mean, on the merits and on the politics, like I'm team Tucker, Steve, MTG here, fellas. So on the merits, I think they have correctly identified, and they did so before this week, that this wasn't really just about weapons of mass destruction. This was a regime change war, which has been confirmed by all these reports that Trump is vetoing plans to kill the Iranian supreme leader. So check for Tucker there. And then on the politics, I just think that like Tucker and Bannon and MTG are way more in tune with the MAGA base than like the gang at National Review. And no one wants another war in the Middle East. And no one is going to believe another intelligence-based, trust me, we're the experts pitch about why we need to go decapitate the leaders of another Middle Eastern country.
So first of all, Israel has not asked the United States to decapitate the leadership of another country. Second of all, Tommy Vietor is the biggest idiot in foreign policy. That dude worked with Ben Rhodes on the JCPOA to set up an Iranian-dominant Middle East that ended with October 7th and wild expansion of terror groups all over the region. That guy. So if he's agreeing with you, you should be running for that. Also, if someone speaks for MAGA.
Okay. So this is what's truly wild here. You're going to sit here and say that the JCPOA actually was what led to October 7th. No argument. No reason why that is the case. I mean, they're using the fact that Iran was enriching up to 60% as the reason why Israel's justified in launching this war. But he's also blaming the deal that kept them enriching lower. It was after Trump tore up the deal that they upped their enrichment levels because they didn't have to abide by it anymore. This is just too insane. Hey, if you want to look at a policy that handed Iran some more influence, I've got a much bigger one for you. The war in Iraq. Like, so for those of you guys who don't know, right? The Iraq is a majority Shiite country that's next door neighbors with Shiite Iran. Okay. So they have a super majority of Shiites in their population. Saddam Hussein's Ba'athist parties were Sunnis. So the minority was ruling over the majority. Okay. Now, for those of you guys who don't know that much about this region, and there's people who know a lot more than me, I do know this much. The Shiite Sunni split, pretty big deal over there. And they don't really care for each other. Little bit of background. So we overthrew Iran's next door neighbor's Sunni dictator and instituted elections. And you'll never guess who won. The Shiites did. We essentially handed Baghdad to Iran on a silver platter. That's what gave them the increased influence in the region, not the deal with Obama, which, by the way, they were abiding by before Donald Trump tore it up. And they were no longer they were no longer forced to at that point. But all of this, like, again, if you notice, he doesn't even respond to any of the arguments that this guy, and I don't know this guy. I don't never listen to Pod Save America in my life. I've heard of it before. But like what he just said there was entirely reasonable. Entirely reasonable. And then, of course, Ben Shapiro makes the point. This is how they always play it, right? They always play it that Israel isn't even asking America. Israel's not even asking America to do nothing. It's like, first of all, Axios broke a story just a couple days ago. Israel is actually asking America. Yeah, they're asking America to bomb Iran. Of course, they always are. And, but even without that, we're not asking America for anything except $4 billion a year unconditionally and give us all of your weapons and your intelligence sharing so that we're capable of pulling this off. I'm like, okay, well, that is actually kind of asking for something now, is it? We're not asking for anything. When the rockets come flying back at us, we're going to need you to shoot them down because we can't defend ourselves. Kind of seems like you are asking for something. And the point is that, as I said before, and I've been saying this last week, if you're saying that because an Iranian proxy conducted October 7th, therefore Iran is at war with them, okay, well, this is an American proxy who started a war with Iran. And so from the Iranian perspective, if you're being consistent with this, from the Iranian perspective, they've been attacked by America. And just from any reasonable perspective. And so what happens now? What happens if in the response to this, some Americans are killed? What does Donald Trump do then? Do you really think Donald Trump, you think if a couple Americans get killed in a retaliatory Iranian strike, that Donald Trump's just going to take that and not have to drop the biggest bomb in the history of bombs or something like that? This thing can escalate very, very quickly. And for you to sit here and just point out that it's like, oh, these guys agree with you, therefore you're wrong, while we stare into the abyss of catastrophe, it's just pathetic. All right, let's keep playing.
That guy. So if he's agreeing with you, you should be running for that. Also, if someone speaks for MAGA, Tucker can't speak for MAGA. Marjorie Taylor Greene doesn't speak for MAGA. Tommy Vietor sure doesn't speak for MAGA. I mean, that's just ridiculous. At least Tucker and Marjorie Taylor Greene can claim to have voted for the president. Tommy Vietor hates that guy, and he's going to speak for what MAGA wants. Good luck again. I think only one.
It's like, again, all Ben Shapiro has is intense dishonesty and the dumbest arguments. Did either of those guys claim to speak for MAGA? Like, what does that even mean? Do you see how he's just trying to play these like tribal games? It's purely just like, you're on this team. That's that team. That's them over there. You're going to let that team speak for your team? No, I say President Trump speaks for our team. The guy, at least from the clip he just played, he never claimed to speak for MAGA. Like, I never claimed to speak for MAGA. I said Trump has betrayed his principles or his promises or whatever, but what his base wanted. But I'm not claiming to speak for them. It's simply what the people wanted from Donald Trump and what they voted him into power for. If you need to know that, you can just look at all the stuff Donald Trump talked about during the campaign about how he was going to end wars and keep us out of wars, and how Joe Biden was just wanted to bomb everything and he wasn't going to do that. They didn't claim to speak for MAGA. What they said is that there's a big split within the MAGA world right now, and we agree with this side more because we don't want to see another regime change war. That's what they said. And so again, there's no actual argument here. This is so incredibly weak. All right, let's play it.
One person kind of speaks for what MAGA as a general rule wants. And I may disagree with it, you may disagree with it, but only one guy speaks for that movement, and that is the President of the United States. Which brings us to the subject of today's takedown.
Okay, here, let's pause it right there. So Ben Shapiro now is essentially, again, only doing this because Donald Trump has cucked to Israel. And so now, of course, he'll have Ben Shapiro's undying support. Ben Shapiro is repeating the Trump line that nobody else speaks for MAGA. Only Donald Trump speaks for MAGA. So is Ben Shapiro's argument here that there is nothing Donald Trump could do that would be a betrayal of America First or of MAGA? Like, what does this even mean? If Donald Trump were to turn around tomorrow and just say, I am implementing Kamala Harris's entire policy. Is that MAGA now? Is this what you're saying, Ben Shapiro? That only Donald Trump gets to care? By the way, again, if you notice here, there's no what does this even mean? MAGA is Make America Great Again. It was a slogan that Ronald Reagan came up with that I believe Roger Stone convinced Donald Trump to run on. By the way, it's a great political slogan. And that's one thing Donald Trump's great at, is being the best self-promoter ever. So he said, but again, you realize you're into a realm where we're not even actually talking about anything. Make America Great Again is whatever Donald Trump says is Make America Great Again. And if you don't get to say what MAGA is, or you don't get to say, yeah, but you know what? I get to say what I think is the correct policy. So like, what are we even talking about here? When you strip away all the nonsense, what are you left with? What does that even mean? Are you saying that no matter what Trump does, it's right? Is that what Ben Shapiro says? Imagine Donald Trump turning on Israel, and then we'd see what Ben Shapiro had to say about Donald Trump. But you're not, so you're saying whatever he says is MAGA. Okay, fine. Fine. I'll concede that. Okay. When he says the wrong thing, I'm going to oppose it. When he says the right thing, I'm going to support it. When he enacts the wrong policy, I'm going to oppose it. When he enacts the correct policy, I'm going to support it. What are we talking about here? What has he added to this conversation other than like he's just insulting me, criticizing my consistency when he's been far more inconsistent, playing a clip of Donald Trump insulting Tucker Carlson in the most idiotic way, playing a very reasonable clip from Pod Save America, and then saying, see, these lefties agree. Are you on their team? And then concluding with, MAGA is as MAGA does. Like, what? Donald Trump says it, and that's MAGA now. Okay. Like, I just don't know. Like, listen, obviously Ben Shapiro is not an idiot. He's got a very high verbal IQ. It's not easy to motor mouth speed talk the way he does. But he's good at doing that. Obviously, he's a talented guy, and but in terms of the actual substance of his arguments here, I don't think there's a dumber person in the world. Like, there's no one you could find. The most, like, picture in your mind the dumbest caricature of a guy who's just blindly supporting Donald Trump, missing teeth and overalls, whatever you want to put on him. These are the type of arguments that guy would throw out. What is this?